Kiss Me Under the Christmas Lights, a sweet romantic comedy. Maple Creek Romantic Comedy, Book 8. Written by Cindy Ray Hale. Narrated by Mari B. and John Bratton. Chapter 1. Christmas lights twinkled overhead as Josie searched for the perfect tree to put in her coffee shop. Not too short and not too tall, being all bundled up while tiny white flakes drifted down to tickle her nose, held a special kind of magic for Josie. It was her favorite time of year. Excitement raced through her as she breathed in the scent of 100 evergreens surrounding her. High-pitched laughter cut through her reverie. Josie stepped past a row of Christmas trees and spotted her recent breakup, Dustin. He was holding a big-haired, knockout blonde on his arm. Jealousy sliced through her, sharp and ugly. She tried to ignore it, but it had cut too deep. She'd only broken up with him 2 days ago. He hadn't wasted a moment replacing her. She didn't want to admit that it hurt, since the decision to end their relationship had been hers, but she couldn't ignore the pain it caused. It was stupid for her to feel this way. She knew Dustin wasn't right for her. They were much too different. It had only taken 2 months of dating for Josie to see that. Dustin was far too materialistic, while Josie preferred a more wholesome lifestyle. He wanted brand new everything. Josie loved her historical 1940s cottage she'd worked to fix up with her father, and the old books she'd been collecting since she was a young teen. Dustin had been all too verbal with how he felt about her old, musty books. Dustin's new girl laughed her high-pitched giggle, and they slipped around the corner out of sight. Noah Stanley, Dustin's roommate and co-worker from the Maple Creek Fire Department, stepped from behind a tree. The 2 roommates must have been picking out a tree for their place. Noah's broad shoulders filled out his jacket in a way Josie could hardly miss. He looked too good to take in. "Noah!" she called to him. He turned, and his face lit up when he saw her.
"Hey, Josie."
He walked over toward her. "You guys picking out a tree for your place?"
"Yep. You doing the same?"
"Nope, I already have a tree set up at home. This one's for the coffee shop. I woke up this morning and decided the shop needed one this year."
"That's a great idea. I'm sure it'll make the place feel cozier for the holidays."
"That's what I was thinking." As if she needed to make her shop cozier than it already was. She prided herself on having the coziest coffee shop in Maple Creek, but adding a Christmas tree was always a good idea. Dustin and his new girl rounded the corner again. They must have been looking at the tree on the corner. What did she care anyway? Dustin was old news. He was free to date whomever he wanted. "Looks like you're third wheeling it tonight," Josie said. Noah shrugged.
"I'm used to it."
She cringed. Used to it because until recently, he'd been third wheeling with her and Dustin. The blonde girl laughed again, too loud and shrill, and Noah grimaced. So he didn't like her either. That was too bad for him because he lived with Dustin. If this girl ended up sticking around, Noah would see a lot more of her. Dustin pulled the blonde close to him and touched noses with her, like they were in one of those cheesy Christmas romance movies. Josie had had enough. On impulse, she grabbed Noah and pulled him into an embrace of her own. She stepped up onto her tiptoes and pressed her lips to his. His lips were dreamy and soft. A warmth engulfed her amid the flurries that surrounded them. A flame lit from that warmth, and Josie pulled back in surprise. What had possessed her to do that?
"Is there mistletoe here that I didn't notice?"
Noah looked up. Josie followed his gaze. "Nothing but the Christmas lights." She couldn't help herself. She had to check to see if Dustin had noticed her impulsive kiss. She wasn't disappointed. He was staring at them with his jaw hanging down to the ground. She took Noah's arm and guided him away from the picturesque couple. "I need help picking out my Christmas tree, and you're just the man to help me."
"How did I get so lucky?"
"The right place at the right time?" Josie suggested. Was she out of her mind? Why had she kissed Noah like that? Well, she knew why, but she didn't want to worry about that right now. She had a tree to pick out. They walked up and down a few aisles, passing Dustin and his date along the way.
What about this one?
Noah asked, pulling Josie toward a beautiful pine. This is perfect. Josie felt a glow warm up her cheeks, either from the joy of finding such a stunning tree or the kiss she'd just shared with Noah. She didn't know.
Josie,
Noah asked her.
why did you kiss me?
That is a valid question. Josie turned to examine the tree.
Since it's such a valid question, would you mind answering it for me?
Josie harumphed and turned back to Noah, tucking a renegade strand of red hair back into her knit hat. It felt like a good idea.
Does this have anything to do with the fact that Dustin is here with someone new?
It might have something to do with that.
Because it's hard for you to see him with someone else?
It's not hard. Why did her voice have to squeak like that? Such a betrayal.
So you're trying to make him jealous by convincing him you're with me now?
Dustin and the girl walked around the corner, and Josie grabbed Noah's arm like they were in a committed relationship. Isn't this the most beautiful tree you've ever seen? Dustin passed with his lady friend, and when they were out of earshot, Noah turned back to Josie.
I'm not sure how I feel about this.
Just go with it, Josie hissed.
You've officially gone nuts.
You should know by now that I'm crazy. It was true. Josie had been close friends with Noah since high school. She was just as crazy now as she'd been back then.
Well, you definitely have a point there.
But she'd never been crazy enough to kiss Noah. Before tonight, anyway. That just showed how much she'd been surprised by Dustin being with this new girl. Why did he have to pick someone so pretty? And where had she even come from? Maple Creek was a tiny town. She'd never seen this girl before. As the owner of the most popular coffee shop in town, Josie knew everyone. She would have known if she'd seen this girl before. With hair that blonde, Josie never would have forgotten her. Hello there, Josie called out to one of the tree lot employees. Can I get this tree?
Sure thing.
The young guy grabbed the tree and threw it over his shoulder. Josie followed him as he brought it to the checkout table. He rang her up, and she pulled out her wallet.
So, are you going to act like you're dating me whenever Dustin is around?
Noah asked. The tree lot employee gave them a funny look, but took the money Josie handed him for the tree. I don't know. I haven't really thought it through.
So you just randomly kiss me?
The employee handed Josie back her change. Do you need help carrying this to your car? Josie beamed at him. That would be lovely.
You didn't answer my question.
Josie turned to Noah. If you must know, yes, I randomly kissed you.
Noah,
Dustin called.
Come check out this tree Sapphire picked out. Sorry, Josie, gotta go.
Sapphire? What kind of a name was that? Josie frowned. She glanced back to see Noah looking at the tree Sapphire had found. Dustin and Sapphire looked happy together. Too happy. How could Josie be single during the holidays when Dustin had a girl like that? Had she made a mistake in dumping him right before Christmas? Maybe she really did need Noah's help after all.
Chapter 2. Noah helped Dustin carry the tree into the house. Pine needles fell all over the floor as they turned the corner and bumped it into the wall. Noah made a mental note to sweep the floor after they had the tree set up. "You just got pine needles everywhere," Sapphire said. "What a big mess." Noah pressed his lips together. What was he supposed to do about that right this moment? His arms were too full of his Christmas tree. Dustin chewed his gum a little too loud, and it was like nails on a chalkboard to Noah. "Bring the tree over here," Sapphire directed. "Good. You can stop right there." Noah was perfectly aware of where the tree needed to go. He didn't need Sapphire to play traffic cop in his living room. He placed the tree in the stand and held it up so Dustin could tighten it into place. Sapphire took off her coat and draped it over the couch. She turned back and faced the men, and Noah had to avert his eyes. Her shirt was so low cut, it showed a good 6 inches of cleavage.
"We should play some Christmas music."
Sapphire pulled her phone from her purse and scrolled through what seemed to be her music collection. "I'll go to the garage and get the ornaments out." Noah had them organized into clear bins on the shelves he'd installed last year.
"Don't you think you should clean up the pine needles first?"
Sapphire commanded. "The broom is next to the fridge," Noah said over his shoulder as he headed toward the garage. He loaded up his arms with 2 bins and headed back into the kitchen. He pushed open the door, and obnoxious Christmas music played over Sapphire's phone. The needles were still all over the floor. Sapphire had seemed so worried about them, but not enough to pitch in and clean them up herself. Instead, she was involved in a hot and heavy makeout session on the couch. "Hey, save that for later. We have a tree to decorate." Noah dropped the large plastic containers on the floor next to the tree. He popped open the white lid and pulled the tree skirt from the top bin. Dustin and Sapphire peeled themselves off each other. She began snapping gum loudly. It surprised him he could hear it over her blasting Christmas music. Wait a second, wasn't Dustin the one with the gum a few minutes ago? Noah groaned in disgust as he crouched to place the bright red skirt around the base of the tree. He flattened his body to the floor so he could really get under the tree and tie the skirt properly.
"I love you, baby,"
Sapphire said in between kissing noises. Love? Already? Hadn't Dustin just met this girl? "I love you too, beautiful." This was getting out of hand. Dustin didn't even know her. How could he know if he was in love with her? From what Noah understood, Dustin had only met her yesterday. He'd known Josie for 15 years, but he still hadn't told her how he felt. That was why he was so hesitant to play along with Josie's game of pretending they were a couple. Because if he wasn't in a relationship with Josie, he wasn't sure he could pretend he was. And he didn't want her to use him to make Dustin jealous. He finished tying the skirt and pushed himself out from under the tree. He stood and rummaged through the ornament box before pulling out 2 rolls of ribbon. Josie had been the one to help him pick out these decorations 2 years ago, when he decided he was grown up enough to store Christmas decorations. Before that, he'd just ended up buying stuff from the dollar store and tossing it out after the holidays. But he'd put down roots after buying a place of his own 2 years ago, and he wanted to feel settled in now. Dustin had only lived with him for the past 6 months. He'd moved in after Noah's previous roommate took a job out of town. Dustin worked for the fire department like Noah did, and when he'd heard about the vacancy at Noah's place, he jumped at the opportunity to rent a room. It had worked out great, until he started getting eyes for Josie. Noah wasn't thrilled when the 2 of them had started dating. He knew from the start they were incompatible. It was a surprise they'd lasted 2 months, let alone 2 weeks. He wasn't impressed with Dustin's decision to jump into another relationship so quickly, and with a girl he barely knew. Noah unwound the wide ribbon and wrapped it around the tree.
"You forgot to plug in the lights,"
Sapphire said. "Oh, right. Would you mind getting that for me?"
"No, I was just pointing it out."
Sapphire snapped Dustin's wad of gum. Noah gritted his teeth. He finished wrapping the ribbon and bent down to plug in the tree.
"You guys got anything good to eat around here? I'm starving."
Sapphire didn't wait for them to answer. She hopped off the couch and headed into the kitchen, rummaging through the cabinets.
"Oh, you have Doritos. Cool."
Without asking, she ripped open the bag and began stuffing her face. She carried the bag back to the couch and kept eating like watching Noah decorate the tree was a new spectator sport. Your lips taste like cheese," Dustin said.
"Gee, I wonder why, doofus."
Sapphire gave a high-pitched laugh. They really were nauseating. Noah wasn't sure how much more he could take, and he'd only met Sapphire today. He considered abandoning the tree altogether and going out to the garage to work on his old truck, but he figured Dustin and Sapphire wouldn't finish the project, and he wanted to get it done tonight. He would go nuts if he had half-empty Christmas bins strewn across his living room for longer than necessary. So he ignored the two lovebirds, if you could even call them that, and finished wrapping the rest of the ribbon around the tree. When that was completed, he began hanging the red and gold ornaments Josie had helped him pick out. Then he interspersed the poinsettias she'd insisted he needed. He'd thought them too girly for a bachelor's tree, but they made her happy, and he couldn't resist making her smile. Nothing brought him more joy than seeing Josie happy. He was glad she'd seen that a relationship with Dustin would never work. Noah didn't mind Dustin as a roommate. He wasn't messy, and he always paid rent and utilities on time. He wasn't bad to hang out with either. He just didn't appreciate it when Dustin started dating Josie, the girl he'd had his own eye on for a while. The one good thing that came out of Dustin's relationship with Josie was that she'd spent a lot more time at Noah's house to see Dustin. He never minded having her around, even if it meant she was kissing on his roommate. But he didn't want to think about that anymore. Thank goodness that was over. But now he had to witness all the smooching Dustin was doing with Sapphire, and he had to admit he wasn't looking forward to her being a regular visitor in his home, especially if she kept taking his favorite snacks without asking. She'd announced her hunger and helped herself. He was about to label his snacks, better yet, hide them in his room, under his bed. He wasn't usually stingy about sharing food. He just appreciated someone waiting to be served, or at least asking before taking chips or cookies. When all the poinsettias were on the tree, Noah reached into the bin for one last item. He pulled out a large gold star. He reached up and put it atop the tree. Sapphire clapped, orange dust flying off her Dorito-encrusted hands. "It looks perfect! How is it that a dude has such pretty decorations for his tree?" Josie helped me pick 'em out. "Who's Josie?"
"She's the girl we saw at the tree lot,"
Dustin explained.
"Oh, the redhead kissing on Noah. You guys are adorable together."
Noah wasn't sure how to respond to that.
"You know what?"
Sapphire clapped her hands again, like she had the most brilliant idea ever.
"We should go on a double date. All four of us. Wouldn't that be perfect, baby?"
She said this last part to Dustin with big, pleading eyes. She didn't seem to notice the way Dustin recoiled at her suggestion, or how quiet Noah had gotten.
"I don't know."
Dustin looked to Noah for help.
"Whatever you want, Sapphire."
Noah wasn't so sure he'd just made the best decision by allowing Sapphire to take him into double dating. He didn't know if he could pretend to date Josie like that. But it was too late to back out now.
Chapter 3. Josie pulled out the box of ornaments she'd bought for her new tree. Christmas music played over the speakers in her coffee shop. She pulled out the sparkly silver and blue round ornaments and hung them on the tree around the silver ribbon she'd already put in place. She'd decided to decorate the tree while it was slow in the coffee shop that afternoon. After she placed all the round ornaments, she brought out tiny silver sleighs and glittery blue stars and added them to the tree. Grabbing a chair and setting it below the tree, she climbed up and placed an angel dressed in silver atop the tree. She climbed back down and then stepped back to inspect her work. The bell on the door jangled, and Josie turned to see Callie step into the coffee shop. Callie worked at her grandmother's bookstore next door. Josie had chosen the location for her coffee shop because she loved that bookstore so much. She'd been shopping there since she was a tiny girl, and she'd gotten close to Mrs. Ellison over the years. The sweet woman's health had deteriorated lately, but she stubbornly insisted on continuing to work. "Hey, Callie." "Hey, Josie. Can I get a latte?" "Sure," Josie said, abandoning the empty boxes scattered across the corner table. She rounded the corner and fixed Callie her drink. How's your grandma? She finally cut back her hours. I convinced her to hire another employee to pick up some of her time. That's great news. It would be if she hadn't hired this particular girl. Josie handed Callie her latte. What do you mean? Come sit down with me for a second. It's pretty much dead in here anyway. Josie followed Callie to a nearby table, and they settled in. My grandma asked me to train her. We're on day 1, and I'm already ready for her to get fired. I can't get her to follow any of the store protocol. She keeps trying to reinvent the wheel, doing things a way she thinks is better. But she doesn't know the store and the system we've already put into place. I've had to go reorganize the books she shelved 3 times already this morning. Have you talked to her about the correct way to do things? Over and over. But Sapphire thinks she knows better and won't listen. Sapphire? What were the odds? Does she have blonde hair? Yeah. How'd you know? She's Dustin's new girlfriend. Or at least she was acting like it at the Christmas tree lot last night when I was picking out the tree for the coffee shop. New girlfriend? I thought he was dating you. I broke up with him last weekend. Good for you. He didn't seem right for you anyway. He totally wasn't. But how could he already be with someone else so soon? I don't know. I don't know any of the details. I bet Noah knows. Have you asked him? I don't care enough to ask. Josie tapped her bright red nails on the table. That's so weird that you work with her. Isn't it? And too bad that Dustin's dating someone who's awful to work with. I can't see that lasting. Josie commented. I hope for his sake it doesn't. But Josie wasn't so sure that would be the case. He seemed completely wrapped in Sapphire at the tree lot. She had a feeling she would be seeing a lot more of Sapphire. Josie sat by a raging fire in her fireplace, with her favorite red blanket draped over her lap and a cup of steaming hot cocoa. Her red and gold decorated tree blinked merrily at her with white lights. Her parents sat across from her. They'd spent the evening eating a ham Josie had baked. Then, they'd made a big batch of Christmas cookies. The last tray of cookies was in the oven baking, and the entire house smelled heavenly. She looked around her home appreciatively. Her father had helped her fix up her 1940s cottage. When she moved in, it had been partially fixed up, but it had still needed a lot more work. Her dad had construction experience and came over to help her refinish the original hardwood floors. They'd put in a dishwasher and disposal in the kitchen and tiled the backsplash with white subway tiles. She'd repainted the red and tan walls with a soft gray, and white gauzy curtains hung around the cheery window that faced the street. She loved her house so much more because of the hard work she had put into fixing it up with her dad. They'd created beautiful memories together as they'd rolled up their sleeves and gotten the job done. She learned to fix up houses with her dad growing up as they'd renovated her family's home. She loved turning something old and worn out into something fresh. She'd converted the second bedroom into a library. 2 of the walls were covered from floor to ceiling with bookshelves her father had helped her build and paint a glossy white. She had an e-reader filled with books, but she much preferred to hold a book in her hands. She loved collecting old books, especially rare ones, and she'd inherited her grandfather's book collection, so the shelves were filled with all of her prized books.
How was your day today?
Her father asked. It was interesting. Mrs. Ellison hired a new employee named Sapphire. Turns out she's dating Dustin now. Your old boyfriend? Yep, the same guy.
Have you met Sapphire?
Her dad sipped his cocoa. Not officially. I saw her with Dustin when I was picking out a Christmas tree for the coffee shop.
How do you feel about that?
Well, initially I was jealous, but I'm okay with it now. It was just a shock, you know? I just thought maybe he'd be a little more upset about our breakup. But he seems to have moved on like it meant nothing to him.
I can see how that might hurt.
Josie warmed at the kindness in her father's voice. He was one of her best friends. She was blessed to have such wonderful, supportive parents. The three of them had always been close. Callie said she's difficult to work with, Josie said. It sounds like she's going to have her hands full, her mom commented. Josie thought about telling her parents about her kiss with Noah, but she held back that juicy tidbit of information. She didn't know how to explain it to herself. How could she explain it to her parents? She didn't know how they would react to her impulsive behavior. Josie was ready to settle down and get serious with someone. Dustin just wasn't the guy for her. He was too interested in playing around. She couldn't see a future with him, so she'd ended it, because she longed for her future to come. She wanted babies to nurture and care for, and she couldn't imagine Dustin being the father of her children. She longed to fill her arms and heart with a little family of her own, but she wasn't so sure that day would ever come for her.
Chapter 4. The past 2 weeks since Thanksgiving had been unseasonably cold. When Noah finished up work at the firehouse Thursday afternoon, he headed over to the pond at a nearby park. He'd heard from a bunch of guys at the station that it had frozen over enough to skate on. He swung by the house first to grab his ice skates. Since playing hockey in high school, he missed being out on the ice. He pulled into the parking lot and grabbed his skates from the seat next to him. He tugged the knit hat his grandmother had made him over his ears. It was frigid outside. Hopefully, he'd be able to warm up on the ice. The frozen-over pond was crowded. Apparently, he wasn't the only one who'd heard about it being frozen enough to skate on today. He sat on a bench and changed from his snow boots to his skates, lacing them up securely. He hadn't worn them in years. "Noah!" He turned to see Josie approaching him, her wavy red hair tumbling over her shoulders. "How's it going, Josie?" "Guess what?" "What?" "Dustin's new girlfriend works at the bookshop next to my coffee shop."
I've seen enough of her to last me 2 lifetimes.
What do you mean?
Josie cocked her head to the side.
She's been driving me up the wall. She's practically living at my house now.
I've had to kick her out past 2 a.m. because she's keeping Dustin up late, and she's laughing so loud I can't sleep. She's eaten all my snacks, and she's constantly bossing me around my own house, but won't lift a finger to help.
Callie's been telling me similar stories. She's been driving her nuts at the bookshop, too.
The bad thing is, she's been hanging around the fire station, and when Dustin's not around, she's all over his buddies. I caught her kissing McNeil when she thought I wasn't looking.
McNeil's probably the biggest troublemaker at the fire station, so that doesn't surprise me,
Josie said.
We have to do something about this, Noah said. I've had about enough.
You mean, like, sabotage their relationship?
I mean, get her to move back to wherever she came from.
Where did she come from anyway? And what's she doing in Maple Creek?
I don't know. She's been secretive about that. Not even Dustin knows. But he's so taken with her, he doesn't seem to care.
That's just weird.
Maple Creek was such a small town, and people usually knew everything about each other thanks to town gossips like Mrs. Wheaton. Speaking of weird, Sapphire thinks we're dating because she saw us kissing. She wants to double date.
Maybe we can use that to our advantage.
You mean like, actually date? Noah wasn't sure how he felt about that. Josie had just broken up with his roommate.
Not for real, just pretend. Think about it. If we're pretending to be in a relationship, we can sabotage their relationship more easily because we'll have an excuse to hang out with them all the time as a couple. We both agree she's awful. Let's do something about it.
I don't know.
Come on, Noah. It could be fun. Don't you think that might make Dustin uncomfortable? You mean like he made me uncomfortable when he showed up with some new girl only 2 days after we broke up? I don't think he's too concerned about me. That wasn't what Noah had noticed when Sapphire had suggested that they double date. He'd looked pretty upset about the idea. He didn't want to start drama with his roommate. They'd had it good so far, and he didn't want to end up finding a new roommate because of this experience.
You want to go skate?
Josie asked. Sure. Noah stood, and she reached her hand out. He hesitated for a moment.
Come on, you can do the fake boyfriend thing. I promise I don't bite. At least not too hard.
That was kind of hot. He couldn't deny that he was insanely attracted to Josie, and had been for years.
Be my pretend boyfriend.
I can't believe I'm agreeing to this. He took her hand and hoped he wouldn't regret it. She led him onto the ice and held his hand as she skated out a bit. They waved to the police chief, Will Vance, and his wife, Layla Bowen, who owned the flower shop next door to Josie's coffee shop. Noah and Josie had been friends with them since childhood. He still remembered when Will had a crush on Layla in middle school.
I'm not very good at this,
she admitted.
You're going to have to let me hang on to you.
We can take it slow if you need to. She didn't seem to notice the double meaning that could have been taken from his words, or if she did, she pretended not to notice.
I appreciate that. I can be a bit of a klutz. I've never been known for my balance and coordination.
They skated a bit out onto the ice, and Josie seemed to get the hang of it. You're doing great. I thought you said you weren't good at this.
That's only because you're letting me hold your hand.
Oh no, what a burden. I have to hold a pretty girl's hand while I skate.
You think I'm pretty?
I agreed to fake date you, didn't I? You think I would have done that if I weren't attracted to you? I have my reputation to uphold here.
You're ridiculous. But thank you for the compliment.
Anytime. And he meant that. Josie had a lot to compliment. She was a great girl. He thought so for a long time. He probably would have asked her out himself a long time ago if it hadn't been for the terrible marriage he'd ended 4 years ago. His ex-wife had abused him, and he'd been cautious about relationships ever since. He'd gotten used to the years alone and grown comfortable with being a bachelor, but lately he was restless.
I was just thinking,
Josie said.
We need to establish some rules for our fake relationship.
Okay.
We can't tell anyone it's fake, especially not Dustin.
All right. That wouldn't be too hard. It wasn't like his family was around. His dad had died 5 years ago, and he wasn't in contact with his mom since she'd left him when he was young. Last he'd heard, she was on drugs in Michigan or someplace. I'm guessing not Sapphire either.
Definitely not Sapphire.
Any other rules?
The point of this relationship is to get rid of Sapphire. We keep focused on that and no getting out of hand.
What do you mean by getting out of hand?
No funny business, like getting feelings involved. This thing needs to stay fake.
Too late. He already had feelings for Josie, but he was determined to keep that under wraps. How could he not have feelings for her? She was warm and caring, gorgeous and charismatic. She could charm the socks off the grumpiest, caffeine-starved customer. She was good to him, too, always eager to lend an ear if he was struggling. She'd been one of his most constant friends since high school. She didn't know he felt anything for her other than friendship, and he hoped to keep it that way, because he was sure she didn't feel the same way about him. It was clear in the way she was adamant about things staying fake. The last thing he wanted was to be made into a lovesick fool, alone and rejected. So he had to keep his feelings safely locked away in a deep, dark corner of his heart. The challenge was keeping it that way.
Chapter 5. Josie pulled up to Noah's house and turned off her engine. He'd texted her earlier that day. letting her know he'd gotten some stuff to help them sabotage Sapphire and Dustin. She wasn't sure what he meant by that, but she was curious to find out. She stepped out of her car and took in Noah. He was leaning over his truck with the hood up. He was covered in engine grease and even had a little smear of it on his forehead. When his biceps flexed, she bit her lip. She always thought Noah was hot, but he'd only gotten more attractive over the years. He was definitely the best-looking guy in the fire department. What was it about telling Noah that he wasn't allowed to have feelings for her that made her want him? It was as if by telling herself no, she wanted what she wasn't supposed to have. She waved away the disruptive thoughts. She needed to focus on the task at hand. And it didn't have a thing to do with how good Noah's abs must look under his thin cotton shirt. "Hey, Noah."
"Hey, Josie."
He looked up and smiled, showing straight white teeth. "How's the truck restoration going?"
"Slowly but surely."
That was something they both had in common. They had a soft spot for restoring old things. He wiped his hands off on a towel streaked with black grease.
"Sorry I'm such a mess. I thought I'd get some repairs in. I got some new parts for my truck this morning, and I couldn't wait to put them in."
"No worries."
"Do you mind hanging out in the living room for a minute while I go take a quick shower? I probably smell awful."
He really didn't. She followed him into the house through the kitchen. It was a disaster. Burned cookies lay on a baking sheet on the stove, and cooking materials lay dirty and strewn across the countertops. Flour dusted the floor, and globs of cookie dough were stuck to the backsplash. Josie had never seen Noah's house look this way before. What happened in here?
Sapphire happened. She wanted to surprise Dustin with cookies today, but then she got distracted by the TV and forgot to set a timer. I came in from working on my car and pulled the burned mess out of the oven. She didn't seem too apologetic about it either.
Where is she now?
No idea. She just took off.
Maybe she ended up going to the bakery to buy cookies?
Noah laughed. I wouldn't be surprised.
You go take your shower. I'll clean up this mess.
You don't have to do that.
I have nothing better to do. Now shoo! Noah disappeared down the hall to the master bedroom. Josie took off her coat and draped it over the back of the couch. She rolled up her sleeves and got to work. First, she dumped the burned cookies into the garbage. And then, she filled the sink with sudsy water. By the time Noah emerged from his bedroom with damp hair and dressed in clean clothes, she had the kitchen sparkling clean.
That was fast.
It wasn't actually as big a mess as I thought it was. I just had to scrub the dishes and wipe everything down.
And put all the stuff away?
Yeah, and put everything away. Sapphire had left the containers for the flour and sugar, and cartons of eggs, and butter all over the countertop. Josie had cooked in Noah's kitchen enough to know where everything went.
I really appreciate you right now. I wasn't looking forward to tackling that mess after working so hard on my car today.
It's no problem. Now, let's see those sabotaging supplies you bought.
They're back in my room. I have to keep them top secret. Let's go back there, in case Sapphire or Dustin come back to the house soon.
Ooh, scandalous. You're taking me back to your bedroom?
Don't get any big ideas.
I'll try to behave myself. Josie wasn't that kind of girl. She was still a virgin. That might have been why Dustin was so eager to move on from her. She doubted Sapphire was so strict with her morals. She'd never been in Noah's bedroom before. His bed was neatly made, and the room was tastefully decorated with older furniture that still seemed to be in excellent condition. He crouched next to his bed and pulled out a few shopping bags.
I got these from that hobby shop on Sycamore Street. I used to love that store when I was younger.
Josie remembered. Noah was known for being the biggest prankster of the school. She figured if anyone knew how to sabotage, it was Noah. And he seemed to have the best supplies all lined up. From whoopee cushions to fart spray to itching powder,
He even had a rubber snake that looked just like Dustin's pet snake. Josie loved Stephanie, the snake. They'd bonded. How does Sapphire feel about Stephanie?
She's terrified of her. Josie grinned devilishly.
Perfect. They really could have some fun with this. So, when do we start?
I was thinking tomorrow night. Sapphire wants to go sing Christmas karaoke in ugly Christmas sweaters at Dixie's Tavern.
That sounds fun. I still have my ugly Christmas sweater from a party I went to last year.
That party Onyx threw? I was there too. Onyx was one of her best friends from high school. She owned a local wedding dress shop.
Yep, Onyx's party. I remember seeing you there.
Speaking of parties, I need to find a date for the fire department party Sunday night. Since you're my fake girlfriend now, I figured I ought to invite you to come along.
Are you asking me out on a date, Noah?
She giggled when she saw a blush creeping across his cheeks.
You're cute when you get embarrassed. Of course I'll go with you.
Do you think Dustin will think it's weird that we're dating?
Who cares what he thinks? Josie knew very well that she cared way too much what the guy thought. She wished she didn't.
She looked over the pranking material spread across Noah's bed. She wasn't the pranking expert like Noah. She'd never pulled a prank on someone before. She just hoped none of it backfired on them. I care what he thinks, Noah said. I'm his roommate. I feel like I'm breaking some bro code.
That doesn't count in this situation. He and I are over. He made that perfectly clear when he started dating Sapphire 2 days after our breakup.
Keep in mind, he saw you kissing me 2 days after your breakup, too. So in his mind, you've done the same thing he has. Josie hadn't thought of that. Noah had a good point. But she couldn't worry about that right now. There was nothing she could do about her impulsive kiss. It was in the past. And she didn't regret it either. It was a good kiss. Surprisingly good. She might just have to try it again sometime. She just wasn't sure how Noah would feel about something like that. And she wasn't sure she had the guts to ask him how he felt about it either. On Saturday morning, the door to Josie's coffee shop jangled, and Sapphire came inside.
Josie, I didn't know you worked here. Did you know I work just next door at the bookshop?
Josie plastered a smile over her face, hoping it covered her annoyance.
I own the place.
As if she hadn't heard her, Sapphire said,
Can I get an iced latte with almond milk? Sure thing.
Josie eyed the ancient-looking book Sapphire held.
What you got there? Oh, just something Mrs. Ellison gave me. The Count of Monte Cristo? Early edition?
Mrs. Ellison would never have given Sapphire a book like that. It must have been worth a fortune. Josie didn't even have a book that rare, and she had a decent collection.
She said it was fantastic. All she had was this older copy, though.
Mrs. Ellison was known for carrying rare books. Book collectors traveled far and wide to visit her little bookshop. Josie knew because her grandfather had been one of her most faithful customers for over 40 years. Her little bookshop was a diamond in the rough. Josie handed Sapphire her latte.
Do you have change for 100? It's all I have on me right now. Of course.
Josie handed her the change, and Sapphire disappeared with the book tucked under one arm and the latte in the other. Josie wiped down some tables. That was weird, her employee Rachel said.
What?
How did she get such an old copy of a classic like that?
She claims Mrs. Ellison gave it to her.
Rachel shook her head. No way. Mrs. Ellison wouldn't have done that. Callie said Sapphire's been acting shady lately.
How so?
She's been going in the back alone with Miss Ellison and not coming out for a long time. And every time Callie goes back there, Sapphire drops the conversation cold like she's trying to hide something from Callie. That was suspicious behavior.
And then all she had was $100 to pay with. So what? That's not a crime. But who carries around large bills like that? Personally, I put money like that directly into the bank, and then I use my debit card. Not everyone does the same thing. It makes me wonder if she has some kind of side gig under the table. We're not here to discuss conspiracy theories about Sapphire. We're here to get work done. I need you to run a coffee to Layla at the flower shop next door. She wants her regular order. Yes, ma'am.
Rachel went to work fixing Layla's favorite coffee. Although Josie considered it unprofessional to gossip about Miss Ellison's employees, she had to wonder herself why Sapphire was acting so suspiciously. Maybe it was even better than she realized, that she and Noah were working so hard to sabotage Sapphire. Dustin was so wrapped up in Sapphire, it seemed like he couldn't see anything else, especially how annoying she was. Josie wondered how long it would take him to notice that Sapphire wasn't such a great catch. She was a nightmare to have around the house. Josie couldn't imagine going into someone else's kitchen and leaving a big burned cookie mess like what Sapphire had done. Not to mention the fact that she ate so many of Noah's snacks without asking.
Chapter 6. Saturday night, Noah pulled his ugly Christmas sweater over his head and stared at himself in the mirror. He laughed at his reflection. He really looked awful in the shapeless green mess he'd found at the thrift store. But that was the fun of it. He was supposed to look terrible. He grabbed his favorite cologne and spritzed it on himself. If he had to wear such a horrid sweater, at least he could smell nice. He already knew from last year's party that Josie looked fantastic in her ugly sweater. Somehow she'd found one that still made her look good, but that wasn't hard to do. She could wear a burlap sack and still look gorgeous with her fair skin and bright red hair. And that red lipstick that she always wore. She looked kissable, taunting him. Kiss me, kiss me, kiss me. And then she had kissed him. She'd completely caught him off guard. He hadn't minded a bit. She was just as good a kisser as he'd imagined. And yes, he'd thought of her that way. He really had hated it when he saw Dustin putting his hands all over Josie. And he hated it worse that he had to put the brakes on his feelings because his roommate had just broken up with her. But it couldn't be helped. He'd agreed with Josie that it would look best if they showed up at Dixie's together, so he got in his car and drove over to her place to pick her up. He parked at the curb and headed to her front door and rang the doorbell. She opened the door, smiling at him.
Ready for our hot date?
You know it.
Ooh, nice sweater. It really brings out your eyes.
Hilarious. We both know this thing is hideous. He looked over her outfit. But somehow, you make your ugly sweater not that ugly anymore. She plucked at her sweater.
Yeah, right. This thing is awful looking.
It wasn't. But he just smiled at her. She was too adorable for her own good. If she didn't watch out, he was going to have a hard time keeping this thing fake. And they couldn't have that, could they? Ready to go?
Yep. Let's get out of here, Hottie.
Hottie? She winked at him.
I'm just practicing for our big performance tonight. We can't have anyone not believe in our relationship status. It could blow our cover. And we need them to focus on us dating so they don't notice the sabotaging.
All right. We'd better stick to the master plan.
Exactly.
Josie followed him to his car, her skinny jeans hugging her curves in a way that was very distracting. He opened her door, and she arched an eyebrow at him as she got in. What? I'm just practicing too. Plus, it's always best to be respectful of a lady. You know, by getting her doors and whatnot. He rounded the car to the driver's side and got behind the wheel.
So, what pranks do we have on the agenda tonight?
Josie asked in a business-like manner. Tonight, we're going to implement the bug ice cube. All we have to do is slip it into her drink when she's not looking.
Let me see it.
Noah leaned across Josie to the glove box, where he had the bug ice cube stored. She was so close he could smell her perfume, He couldn't focus on that or he would go mad. He pulled the prank item out of his glove box. He had it in his sandwich bag so he could tuck it in his pocket easily. Josie took it from him and examined it.
Ooh, this thing is disgusting. I would hate to find this thing in my drink.
As long as she doesn't look too close, she won't realize it was put there by someone.
So we'll have to swoop in and remove her drink quickly before she can discover that it's a fake.
That's what I was thinking too.
But how is this supposed to make her want to break up with Dustin?
This won't do that, but it'll make it so she never wants to go back to Dixie's. So, no more fun nights out. There are basically no other nightlife options in Maple Creek. Everything else is dark and cold this time of year.
But then she'll just want to hang out at your house all the time.
I have some ideas for that, too.
Like what?
Noah pulled out his phone. I just ordered these online. He showed her a picture of a pack of 100 lifelike plastic cockroaches. We just have to make it so that roaches fall all over her if she opens the pantry to get into my food. We can put them in the corners of the pantry upside down like they're dead.
That's disgusting, Noah.
That's the idea.
I love how excited you're getting about this.
I'd forgotten how much I've missed my pranking days. He pulled into the Dixie's Tavern parking lot as he thought fondly on all the people he'd pranked, and they had never known it was him.
You've gotten boring in your old age.
Noah gave her a wide smile. Not anymore. Josie pushed open her car door. Hey, you're supposed to let me get your door for you. You're breaking out of character.
Oh, right. Sorry.
Josie shut her car door.
Okay, you can get my door now.
Noah laughed and stepped out of the car to go play his part. We can't have anyone thinking I'm slacking off on my boyfriend duties.
You're right. We have to take this seriously now. We're in the public eye.
He opened her door and took her hand. After you, madam.
What, are we in a Regency novel now?
Noah furrowed his brow in confusion. What's a Regency novel?
You know, Pride and Prejudice.
The movie where the girl falls for the grouchy guy?
It was a book first. One of my favorites.
I'll have to remember that.
I'm impressed you know what Pride and Prejudice is. But that's the Regency time period.
You were watching it at the house with Dustin a couple of months ago. I came out and watched it with you guys.
You did? I don't even remember that.
But Noah did. He remembered everything about Josie. He opened the door to Dixie's Tavern for Josie, and they went inside. He scanned the room. It was crowded, which wasn't unusual for a Friday night. See Dustin and Sapphire yet?
Yeah, they're sitting over there at the bar. Come on.
Josie grabbed his hand and led him through the crowd, weaving between guys in cowboy hats and girls with low-cut tops.
Hey, you two,
Josie said brightly when they arrived at the spot near Dustin and Sapphire.
Oh, hi.
Sapphire's face lit up when she saw them.
You're Josie, right? Yep, that's me.
What's up, Noah? Dustin greeted him. He didn't acknowledge Josie, and Noah wondered if Dustin really was harboring some resentment toward Josie for ending things between them. Not much, Dustin.
What are you drinking tonight, Sapphire?
Josie asked. Sapphire held a small glass filled with dark liquid on the rocks.
Rum and Coke.
Perfect. He just needed to get Josie to distract her, and then he could slip the ice cube with the bug into her drink. He leaned up next to the bar, next to Sapphire.
Nice sweater, Sapphire.
Josie smiled at her.
Thanks. I love ugly Christmas sweaters. It took some convincing to get Dustin to wear one tonight.
She leaned forward like she didn't want Dustin to overhear her saying that last part.
I had to buy one for him. He didn't even own one. Can you believe that? He can be such a spoilsport.
Noah wasn't surprised to hear that.
Watch our drinks for a minute, Sapphire said. I'm gonna go request a Christmas song for us, Dusty Pooh. Wanna come with me?
Dusty Pooh? She already had a nickname for him. Noah couldn't help but laugh to himself. Of course, baby. He got up and followed her to the DJ's stand. As soon as they left, Noah reached in his pocket and opened the bag with a fake ice cube. He pulled it out and quickly dropped it in her drink. He turned to see Josie watching him with a wide smile.
"Nice going,"
she said. Sapphire and Dustin came back, and she climbed back onto her stool.
"We're second in line."
She grabbed her drink and took a sip. She didn't seem to notice the recent addition to her drink. She swirled the liquid around in the glass, and Noah watched the fake ice cube spin in circles. Even from where he sat, he could see the bug through the side of the glass. It looked real and disgusting. He put his arm around Josie's shoulders and pulled her into him. Might as well put on the show Sapphire thought was real. Josie looked up at him and smiled. At least she didn't seem to mind the close contact.
"You two are so cute together. How long have you been dating?"
Sapphire took another sip of her drink.
"Just a few days."
Noah laughed to himself as Sapphire's eyes grew wide.
"Oh, just like me and Dusty Pooh."
"Something like that,"
Noah muttered under his breath.
"Don't you just love when a relationship is new? So many opportunities before the two of you. It's the best."
Noah wondered how many new relationships Sapphire had experienced. She looked down into her drink, and her face went pale, even in the dim lights of the room. She took her straw and poked at her ice.
"What is that?"
She rummaged around with her ice.
"Is that a spider in my ice?"
"What?" Noah asked, putting just enough panic into his voice to be believable.
"No way. Let me see."
Before she could respond, he grabbed her drink and examined it himself.
"Yup, there's a gigantic spider in there."
"Are you serious?"
"Dead serious."
"I can't believe this. I need to talk to the bartender."
"I'll handle it. I'm a friend. I'll make sure you get a refund and a free drink."
Noah glanced over at Josie, her face red from holding back laughter. He walked over to Dixie.
"Hey, I'm playing a prank on my friend over there. I put this fake ice cube in her drink."
He showed the drink to Dixie and slipped her a 20.
"Can you play along and get her a new rum and coke? Tell her it's on the house."
Dixie laughed.
"Sure thing, Noah."
Noah turned his back to Sapphire and grabbed the evidence from her glass, slipping it back into his pocket into the plastic bag. Dixie fixed another rum and coke and took it over to Sapphire.
"This one's on the house, sweetheart. Sorry about the bug in the ice. We need to get an exterminator in here." "You ought to be ashamed, running an establishment like this."
But Dixie didn't hear her. She'd already gone back to Will and Layla, who had just shown up with Onyx at the crowded counter.
"I want to go, Dusty Pooh."
"You don't want to sing our song? Jingle Bells is up next."
Sapphire shook her head.
"I'm way too grossed out."
"Okay, anything you want, baby."
"Let's go back to your place and see what's on TV."
Dustin nuzzled her ear.
"Yum, that sounds like a plan."
"We'll see you two later,"
Sapphire said, her cheeks flushed.
"Bye,"
Noah said to their retreating backs.
"Well, that backfired."
"Anything she wants?"
Josie fumed after they'd left.
"He never said anything like that to me. It was always his way or the highway."
"They're still in the honeymoon phase."
Noah frowned. He thought Josie was getting beyond her lingering feelings for Dustin. He now realized that he'd been mistaken. And here he was starting to believe that there might be something real between him and Josie. He wouldn't make that mistake again. He had to make sure he kept a safe emotional distance from her from this point on.
He and I never really had a honeymoon phase. We went straight to him being a big, selfish jerk. I don't know how she has him so wrapped up in what she wants."
Noah glanced at the discarded rum and coke. He might as well enjoy the perfectly good drink he'd just paid for. After the turn this night had taken, he needed it.
Chapter 7. "Do you have the itchin' powder?" Josie asked. "Yep." Noah patted his jacket pocket. as they headed to the front door of his fire chief's house, where the fire department Christmas party was being held.
"It's right here."
"This is going to be great." The front door opened, and the fire chief's wife welcomed them inside with a cute Santa hat perched on her head. "Come on in, you two." They followed her inside. "We have eggnog and cookies over here on the dining room table." "Sounds delicious." The room was full of her favorite people, not counting Sapphire. She was there, perched on Dustin's lap, but she definitely wasn't one of Josie's favorite people. She still wore her puffy red coat. How was she supposed to put itching powder in it if she didn't take it off? Mike, one of the other firefighters, had a girl next to him, and the two couples were talking. "Hey, everyone!" She looped her arm through Noah's, making a statement. She snuggled into Noah possessively. He felt nicer than expected, and he smelled delicious, like spice and warmth. Yep, this pretend dating thing was paying off already. Noah led her over to the refreshment table, and they both got a plate with a couple of cookies and a cup of eggnog each. They circulated through the room together, playing the part of the happy couple, conversing with their friends from the fire department. Josie had been friends with Noah for years and had hung out with him and his fire department friends often. Josie spotted Sapphire across the room, taking off her coat and laying it on the back of the couch. Beneath her coat, she wore a revealing tank top with plenty of skin exposed. Josie nudged Noah with her elbow and jutted her chin toward Sapphire's jacket. Noah leaned his head down to her, his breath brushing against her ear in a way that made goosebumps rise on her arm.
"Now's the perfect time to sprinkle some itching powder into her coat. I'll create a diversion. You go get her coat and sprinkle the powder into it."
He handed her the powder. "Thanks. I got this."
"Who's ready for a Christmas dance-off?"
Noah's voice boomed through the room. He let go of Josie's arm and turned up the music playing in the corner. He started shaking his booty in a ridiculous, fake, seductive way, and Josie couldn't help but laugh. She was so distracted by Noah's little display that she almost forgot about the powder. She laughed and then scanned the room. All eyes were on Noah. He'd even gotten a few people to dance with him. She casually walked across the room to where Sapphire's jacket lay draped across the back of the couch. She pulled the packet of itching powder from her pocket and sprinkled some on the puffy red coat, getting some into the sleeves. Looking around to check that she hadn't been seen, she spotted Mike looking directly at her. She gave him a little smile and put a finger to her lips. He raised an eyebrow at her, but said nothing to rat her out. With the itching powder safely back in her pocket, she then turned back to the party and joined Noah on the dance floor and showed him a few moves of her own. They ended up laughing together and leaving the dance floor. He pulled her off to the side, near the hallway that led back to the bedrooms.
"How did it go? Were you able to get the powder into her coat?"
"Yeah."
"Do you think anyone saw you?"
"Mike did, but I don't think he's going to say anything."
"Nah, Mike's cool. He won't talk."
"That's what I thought." "What are you two talking about so secretly over here?" The fire chief's wife came over to where they stood. "Oh, nothing in particular." "Did you notice what's above you?" she asked, pointing to a bundle of mistletoe hovering just over their heads. "Ooh, mistletoe!" Sapphire must have overheard the fire chief's wife, because she seemed like a kid in a candy store at the prospect. "Kiss her! Kiss her!" she chanted. Fear clutched at Josie's heart. Was Noah going to be okay with kissing her? He seemed to be all right with it when she kissed him at the tree lot, but she wasn't so sure he'd be okay with another one. But they'd already posed as a couple, and with Sapphire looking on, how could they get out of this kiss? More people were glancing in their direction, and Josie realized she didn't have any other choice. She swallowed thickly and turned her face toward Noah, closing her eyes and letting her lips form a slight pucker. She tucked her hands into her pockets nervously, bracing herself for rejection.
She'd expected him to give her a light peck, but he wrapped his arms around her torso and pulled her into the warmth of his muscular firefighter's body. It surprised her how much more muscular he was than Dustin. Noah hadn't really held her this close before, and the time they'd kissed at the Christmas tree lot, Noah had been wearing a bulky coat. But now, nothing stood between them but their thin cotton shirts. Her body relaxed, and she took her hands from her pockets and slung them loosely around his neck instead. He took her mouth in his and kissed her with a surprising amount of tenderness. His hand stroked up her back and into her red curls. She let out a small sigh against his lips, moving her hands to stroke his face against the rough stubble across his cheek. He felt intoxicating beneath her hands. Everything he was doing was magic. She'd never experienced so much connection to another human being. Chills ran down her arms, and her heart bound itself to his. She never wanted the moment to end. Everything fell away. No one and nothing existed but them, and their two entwined bodies, and the joy that wrapped around them. He pulled away and looked into her eyes with so much tenderness that her mind spun from the headiness of it all. Someone whistled, and Josie was jolted back into reality. She and Noah weren't together. They never had been. He was only acting for the crowd, giving them the show they wanted to see. And it was only for the mistletoe. If it weren't for that, he wouldn't have kissed her. She couldn't let herself forget that.
Chapter 8. Noah watched as the softness in Josie's eyes turned hard. She pulled away from him and tucked a strand of red hair behind her ear. The same ultra-soft red hair he'd just had his hand twisted up in. He let his arm drop lamely to his side. For a moment, he had thought he'd felt something real with Josie. He thought maybe he'd seen it in her eyes. But who was he joking? Josie was just pretending to be into him. He knew she was probably harboring lingering feelings for Dustin. Why else would she be going through all this trouble to prank Sapphire? He stepped back from Josie and cleared his throat. Her eyebrows drew together, and her mouth opened into a small O. She rushed away from him into the bathroom in the hallway behind him. How strange. Maybe she had diarrhea or something. But then he realized what was happening when his own face itched. The itching powder. Josie must have put it in her pocket and then gotten it on her hands when she put her hands in her pocket. And then she'd touched his face. At the time, it had felt amazing, but now he just wanted to wash his face off. He followed her to the bathroom, where he could hear her splashing water with the door open. She turned to him with wide eyes.
"Did I get it on you? Don't touch your cheek. You'll just get it on your hands. Here, I'll help you wash it off."
She pulled him close to her, and he bent down to the sink. She splashed water onto his face and gently rubbed her hands over him. Her touch caused goosebumps to rise on his arms. He couldn't get enough of her closeness. But he knew he had to be careful to keep his heart from getting too entangled. Because although their moments together felt very real to him, he knew it was an act for Josie. If he didn't watch himself, he might discover that he was falling head over heels in love with this woman. And he could see that going in only one direction for him. He wasn't sure he could deal with that kind of heartbreak, especially after what happened with his ex-wife. He'd given his all to Sophie, only to have her crush him slowly from the inside out through years of abuse. He'd had fun playing pretend with Josie, but after this kiss, he wasn't sure how much more he could take. It was beginning to feel too real to him. Seeing the hardness in her eyes confirmed that his feelings were one-sided. Josie gently patted Noah's face dry, and the itchiness subsided.
"Well, that backfired," he commented. Do you think they bought that kiss? Josie whispered.
Oh yeah, they bought it. Even he had bought it for a moment there. Josie threaded the towel through the metal bar on the wall.
We should probably get back to the party.
She lowered her voice.
I can't wait to see Sapphire put on that jacket. That itching powder was the worst.
Too bad it backfired. We'll have to be careful with the rest of that stuff.
Yeah, I won't be putting my hands in my pockets anytime soon. I'll go home and wash these jeans so this doesn't happen again.
They went back out to the living room and settled on the leather sectional together. He put his arm around Josie, and she settled into him like they were a couple comfortable being close instead of what they were. And Noah didn't know how to define their relationship. Were they just friends? Something more? Josie had been flirty with him even before she'd dated Dustin. But now that they had this much chemistry together, he wasn't sure how to define what their relationship status was. All he knew was he felt incredibly attracted to Josie, and he always had. Dustin got a phone call from his parents, who lived across the country, and he stepped outside to talk to them. He was only gone 2 minutes before Sapphire flirted with some other firefighters. And she was getting touchy-feely, too. She put her hands on James's chest and stroked his bicep. If she was that comfortable touching other guys while Dustin was on a short phone call, what did she do when she had an entire night alone with one of them? A few minutes later, Dustin came in from his phone call, and Sapphire went back to acting the part of the loyal girlfriend. Noah had the distinct impression that maybe he and Josie weren't the only ones acting. But their fake relationship was something they both agreed upon. Dustin was left in the dark. Noah wasn't Dustin's protector, but this new tidbit of knowledge infuriated him. He'd spent plenty of time feeling jealous of Dustin while he'd had his arms wrapped around Josie, but now he'd moved on to another girl, one who was sneaking around behind his back, and Noah felt sorry for him. Sapphire looked up at Dustin with huge doe eyes, like he was her one and only.
You ready to go, baby?
He smiled down at her, his lips curling up at the edges. More than ever. She grabbed her coat from the back of the couch and slipped her bare arms into the sleeves.
We should get going too, Noah.
Josie winked at him. Sounds good to me. He hoped that if they followed Sapphire and Dustin out to the car, they could catch their prank taking effect. Noah and Josie grabbed their own coats and hurried to catch up with Dustin and Sapphire, who had already gone outside to climb into Dustin's truck. By the time they reached the part of the sidewalk that connected to the driveway, they could see Sapphire dancing around in her coat like it was on fire. Noah could hear Josie attempting to hide her laughter from next to him.
I think I have ants in my coat or something. Do you think your fire chief's house is infested?
I don't know, but if you think your coat is making you itch, take it off. Sapphire ripped off her jacket and balled it up. She tossed it into the cab of Dustin's truck.
Is everything okay?
Josie asked, coming up to Dustin and Sapphire.
My arms are on fire.
Sapphire scratched her arms, hopping from one leg to the other. Noah heard Josie snort behind her hand.
It's not funny, Josie. I can tell you're laughing at me.
And it wasn't funny that Sapphire was touching other guys while she was with Dustin. But he didn't want to tell his buddy and break his heart. There had to be a better way to get him to stop pining for Sapphire. But he acted like she could do no wrong. It was incredibly frustrating to watch for Noah. Maybe there was some way through the pranks that he could convince Dustin that Sapphire wasn't good for him. If he could convince his buddy she was obnoxious, then maybe he would break things off with her of his own accord. And then his feelings would be spared. Noah didn't know why he fought so hard to protect Dustin's heart when he didn't work half as hard to protect his own. He was too chicken to tell Josie how he really felt, too scared of rejection. He didn't want to ruin his friendship with her. What they had was fun. It was good. They'd been comfortable in the place where they'd been for the last several years. Did he dare rock the boat? He knew if he never told her how he felt, he might miss out on an amazing opportunity to date a beautiful girl. Was it possible that he'd sensed correctly from their mistletoe kiss that she returned his feelings? And if she had romantic feelings for him, was he an idiot for letting an opportunity for happiness pass him by?
Chapter 9. I brought us cocoa from the coffee shop, Josie said when Noah opened his front door. I feel like we might need this tonight. Who doesn't love a cozy cup of cocoa with their popcorn when it's movie night?
Thanks, Josie. You're the best.
Did you bring us some too? Sapphire asked, poking her head over Noah's shoulder. I did, actually. Josie didn't know why. She shouldn't be doing anything to be extra nice to Sapphire. She didn't want to encourage her to stick around. But it was Christmas, and she didn't want to look impolite or like a big jerk by bringing drinks for only Noah when she knew they were all watching a movie together. Plus, it might keep Sapphire from suspecting that they were the ones sabotaging her relationship with Dustin if she brought by hot cocoa from time to time.
Josie, can I talk to you in my room for a second?
Noah asked when she'd followed him into the living room. Of course. She dropped the drink carrier onto the coffee table in front of Dustin and Sapphire. Help yourselves. Everything is the same. Noah led the way down the hall to the master bedroom. He closed the door behind him.
I need to warn you. I got the cockroaches earlier today, and I already put them in the pantry. So don't open the pantry unless you want roaches falling all over you. I have a bunch of them upside down on the countertops and on the floor in the corners. Just enough to look like we have an infestation.
That's genius, Josie said. I can't wait to see her reaction.
It's only a matter of time before we get rid of her for good.
We should put the rubber snake in the toilet, too, Josie suggested. Maybe I could say something about how Stephanie got out of her tank.
Are you saying we should kidnap Stephanie?
Only temporarily. We can lock her up in your bathroom and hide her in the vanity.
I have the box the fake roaches came in. Maybe we can tape her up in there and poke holes in the box until the prank's over.
Brilliant. Let's do it. I'll go get Stephanie. You get the holes poked in the box. Josie cracked open Noah's door and poked her head out. Dustin and Sapphire were still on the couch with their backs to her. She crept into the third bedroom, which Noah used as a home office. It was where Stephanie's tank was kept. She pushed open the door and lifted the lid to Stephanie's aquarium. Hello, beautiful girl. Have you missed me? She pulled out Stephanie and coiled her around her arm. Then she pushed open the office door and checked down the hall to where Dustin and Sapphire still sat. Only this time, they were making out. Josie made a face. She hoped they wouldn't do that while they were watching their Christmas movie. She crept back into Noah's room and shut the door. Ready to be snake-napped, Stephanie? Noah already had a couple of holes poked in the box. She lowered her arm into the box, and Stephanie slithered into her temporary new home. Noah closed the flaps on top of the box and then taped them shut to keep Stephanie from escaping and getting lost in his bathroom. He tucked the box beneath his bathroom sink and shut the cabinet door.
Now to sneak into the guest bathroom to hide the rubber snake in the toilet.
Noah handed Josie the pretend snake. Eventually, Sapphire will have to go to the bathroom, especially with that hot chocolate cycling through her system, Josie said, taking the toy from him. This thing really looks like Stephanie.
Okay, it's showtime. Let's get that snake planted, and then we'll join those lovebirds for our movie night.
Sounds good. Josie tucked the snake under her shirt, and then snuck out of Noah's room and into the guest bathroom Dustin used. She shut the door behind her and slipped the snake out from under her shirt. Perfect. She planted the snake in the toilet and then left the room. If she had to use the bathroom before Stephanie discovered the snake, she'd just have to use Noah's bathroom. She went back into Noah's room to report back to him.
All done?
The fake Stephanie is all curled up in Dustin's toilet.
Definitely not a place I'd want to be curled up in.
Ew, Noah, that's disgusting.
Isn't it, though?
Josie sobered up. I need to tell you something.
What is it?
Today, Callie came to the coffee shop from her grandma's bookshop next door.
Turns out Sapphire's been staying with her.
Bless her soul. What's poor Callie been going through? Josie laughed.
No, right? Being Sapphire's roommate must be fun.
Fun wasn't exactly the word I had in mind. What else did Callie say?
She said that Sapphire's been bringing home a bunch of rare books from work. Stuff Mrs. Ellison never should have been giving her. I think she's getting old and senile, and she's letting Sapphire talk her into giving her these books.
If Mrs. Ellison is giving Sapphire the books, there's nothing we can do about that. Did Callie talk to her grandma to see what's going on?
She did. Her grandma insists that she wants Sapphire to have the books. But those books are a part of Callie's inheritance, and Sapphire is stealing it out from under her.
That's awful.
It gets worse. Callie found out that Sapphire's been selling the books online. She found Sapphire's laptop open in her room when Sapphire went to the bathroom, and she saw that she's been selling the books for thousands of dollars.
And taking Callie's inheritance as her own.
Exactly. Josie felt furious just thinking about it.
All the more reason to get rid of this girl.
It's not like we can call the police either. Mrs. Ellison has every right to give the books to Sapphire.
You're right. Sapphire isn't exactly doing anything illegal.
Noah pointed out. That's what's so frustrating about all of this.
Noah crossed his arms over his chest. Because she's completely getting away with it.
Yeah, and there's nothing Callie or anyone else can do.
He uncrossed his arms, clenching his hands into fists. There's something we can do.
We tell Dustin what she's doing so he sees the truth about who he's dating?
A dark look crossed over Noah's features. That wasn't exactly where I was going with this. But I guess you are pretty focused on getting Dustin to see who he's dating.
Josie nodded. It would be nice.
Because you're still hung up on Dustin.
It wasn't a question.
Josie hesitated. She could hear the pain in Noah's words, and they caught her off guard.
I wouldn't really put it that way.
It's okay to admit it, Josie. It hasn't been that long since you broke up. I get it.
But I'm not hung up on him.
As she said it, she realized it was true. She was more hung up on Noah than Dustin at this point. But it wasn't like she could tell Noah that. She knew he struggled with the way his ex-wife had treated him during their marriage. It was why Noah had never dated her or anyone else. But Noah was acting strange tonight. A blood-curdling scream rang out, and Noah and Josie exchanged a glance. They left his room together. Is everything okay? Noah asked from the hall.
You have bugs all over the place!
Sapphire sounded like she was hyperventilating. They turned the corner just in time to see Sapphire brushing a plastic cockroach from her shoulder. The floor was littered with the plastic bugs all around her feet. Whoa, this is getting out of control. I already called the exterminator, but they're backed up for at least 3 weeks. Josie could barely hold back her laughter. No exterminator would be that busy this time of year. Most of the bugs were dead. Hey, Dustin? Noah asked.
Yeah?
Did you take Stephanie to the vet or something? No. Why'd you ask? I just noticed her tank was open and she wasn't in there. I've been looking around for her, but I can't seem to find her anywhere.
Are you serious?
Dustin got up and darted back to the room where Stephanie lived.
Oh, yeah,
Josie said.
I noticed that too.
Dustin came back out. She's gone!
Stephanie? The snake?
Sapphire screeched.
I can't deal with this.
Sapphire held her hands away from her body like they were infected with some life-threatening disease.
I have to go wash my hands. I feel like I have bug guts all over me.
She darted away toward the bathroom. Immediately, another blood-curdling scream came from the bathroom. Sapphire ran from the bathroom, her face white.
Dustin, I can't take it anymore. I have to go.
She ran out of the house, slamming the front door behind her. Josie sat on the couch and grabbed her hot chocolate.
She'd forgotten all about it. She sipped her drink. It had gotten cooler, but it still had enough warmth to be good.
I'll go grab Stephanie and put her back in her tank,
Noah offered. He gave Josie a look that said keep him busy. Josie turned to Dustin. Have you picked out a movie to watch tonight? Dustin looked sheepish. No, not yet. It was the first time they'd sat down together since they'd broken up. I hope things aren't weird between us because we dated once. Josie gave him an encouraging smile. I'd hoped we could still be friends since Noah and I are together now. You didn't waste any time, did you? Dustin accused. Me? You were the one with Sapphire right after we broke up. That shouldn't matter. You'd already found a way to be with Noah. Was that why you wanted to break up with me? Josie hadn't thought about that. She'd been so preoccupied with making Dustin jealous that she hadn't stopped to realize what might happen when it worked. Her revenge didn't seem so sweet after all. She had been attracted to Noah, but she never would have cheated on Dustin while they were together. That wasn't the kind of girl she was. But now she'd backed herself into a corner, and she didn't know how to prove that to Dustin. How could she get him to realize that she wasn't that kind of girl? He probably wouldn't believe her even if she told him the truth about her relationship with Noah being fake, because it looked too real. And what motivation did he have to believe that it was fake, when he already thought she was eyeing Noah before they had broken up, and that Noah was the reason she'd ended things? Noah came back out with the ball python wrapped around his shoulder.
I got her safe and sound, Dustin.
He looked between the two of them, sitting on the couch together, and his expression darkened.
Sorry, am I interrupting something?
No. Josie stood up. I was just leaving. After the turn the night had taken, she had no desire to be festive. And the last thing she wanted to do was sit on the couch between her ex-boyfriend and the new guy she was fake dating and secretly crushing on. It was one thing to be around him when he seemed happy with Sapphire, but now she wasn't so sure that was the case. Had he been putting on a show for her because he was jealous that she was with Noah now? She had no way to know. But what she did know was that she was emotionally overwhelmed for the night and couldn't take a moment more. Good night, Noah. She grabbed her purse and her hot chocolate and walked out the door. Tuesday night, when she got off work, Josie decided to do some Christmas shopping. She didn't have any plans for the night, and she'd been struggling with the perfect gift to buy her dad. She had no idea what to get him. She knew he loved tools, and no man could have too many tools, right? So she headed over to the hardware store. Not knowing what she was looking for, she wandered the aisles aimlessly. Then she turned a corner and saw Noah crouching in the plumbing section. Hi, Noah. Noah looked up in surprise.
Josie, what are you doing here?
I'm shopping for a Christmas present for my dad. What are you doing?
I'm fixing up my bathroom, and I busted up the plumbing when I was trying to install a new tub faucet. So now I have an enormous project on my hands tonight.
Was it just her, or did he sound overly formal and distant? Was he hurt that she'd been talking to Dustin the night before? She had left in a bit of a rush. She wasn't sure what his formal tone meant, but she'd been so overwhelmed at the time that she hadn't stopped to think what Noah might be feeling. Josie studied him. How do you have time to fix up your bathroom in the middle of the holiday season?
It's better than sitting on the couch next to the lovebirds while they make out.
Josie kept her face neutral to avoid showing Noah how much that disgusted her. So the roaches didn't convince her to stay away permanently?
Apparently not.
Well, that's frustrating.
You have no idea.
Noah paused for a moment like he was thinking.
What were you and Dustin talking about last night?
Dustin thinks I've been eyeing you since he and I were still together. He thinks I wanted to break up with him so I could be with you.
Oh, so that was your master plan all along.
Josie smiled faintly. Yeah, something like that. She considered for a moment admitting to Noah that she really did have a crush on him all that time. But she kept that information to herself, because she wasn't sure how he would respond to it. It just hurts that he thinks I'd be unfaithful like that.
It's not the worst thing in the world. At least he doesn't think you cheated on him while you were still together.
I guess that's true. He's not accusing me of cheating.
So look on the bright side. It's all in the past anyway. You and Dustin are over, and he's moved on.
And I've moved on too,
Josie admitted. You have?
I have. I wish him the best, just not with Sapphire. I wouldn't wish her on anyone.
I'm glad we're in agreement there.
We most definitely are.
After a small lull in the conversation, Noah asked, "What are you thinking about getting your dad for Christmas?"
I have no idea.
If you're open to suggestions, I saw something you might want to get him.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah. There's a set of wrenches on sale on aisle 3. Comes in a metal toolbox with drawers, and it's small enough to carry with a handle on the top. It's a good deal. I was eyeing the set myself.
That sounds perfect. Thank you. I'll have to go check it out.
Glad to help.
Josie hesitated before heading over to the aisle with the tool set. What are you doing after this?
I'm heading home to finish working on my bathtub.
Mind if I join you?
You sure? It'll be dirty work.
Are you kidding me? I love a good bathroom remodel.
Then come on over. I could use the company.
Company? I plan on getting dirty right alongside you. I'm not the dainty kind that sits on the toilet and watches by the sidelines.
I'm not sure how to respond to that.
I didn't mean I'd be using the toilet, weirdo. I meant I'd be sitting on it fully clothed, with the lid shut like a seat.
I knew what you meant. But you opened yourself up to the opportunity to tease you. I couldn't resist.
Chapter 10. Can you hand me that wrench? Noah sat on the edge of the bathtub with his sleeves rolled up. Josie kneeled next to him with her sleeves pushed back. She grabbed the wrench and passed it to him. He loved it that she knew exactly which one he needed, even though there were 5 at his feet. But she knew enough about remodeling that she understood what he needed just from paying attention. It made her even more attractive in his eyes. Sapphire and Dustin sat on the couch in the other room, watching a Christmas movie Sapphire must have chosen. No one knew Dustin would never have been caught watching something so sappy on his own. The guy was always watching action movies with gory battle scenes. He must really be whipped by this girl. It was time to up their sabotaging game before Dustin was hooked beyond saving from this girl, and Noah would end up with Sapphire hanging around his apartment long term. "Can you shut the door, Josie?" She caught sight of the meaningful look he gave her, and she hopped up without a word to shut the door. "What's up?" "It's time to embed a fart machine in the couch."
"How are we going to do that when they're sitting on it?"
Josie asked. "They're focused on their movie. We can just sneak in there and put it under the couch from behind."
"Like belly crawl into there with a fart machine?"
"Exactly."
"Perfect. You're just the man for the job."
"Why me?"
"If you think I'm going to belly crawl across your dirty floor, then you're nuts."
"My floor isn't that dirty."
"Unless you want Sapphire eating your chips for the next 5 years, you'd better commit to this. And you just said yourself that your floor isn't that dirty. Perfect for you to crawl across."
Noah groaned. "Okay, fine. I'll implant the fart machine." He climbed out of the bathtub and washed his hands at the sink. Josie followed him out of the bathroom and into his adjoining bedroom. He had the fart machine tucked under his bed. As he reached for the machine, he saw the box for the cricket chirper, and it reminded him that he'd planted the speaker for it in the corner of the living room inside the recliner earlier that week. He'd forgotten all about it. He pulled out the remote. Now was the perfect time to put it to use. He grabbed the fart machine and the remote to the cricket chirping machine.
"How does the fart machine work?"
"It periodically releases a terrible smell every 3 minutes. You can manually press the button too, but we're going to use the time setting."
"Let's try it out to see how bad it is,"
Josie suggested. Noah pressed the button, and a rotten egg smell released from the black plastic box. Josie made a face.
"Oh, gross! That's disgusting.
She rubbed her hands together with glee.
This is going to be great. That smells pretty real.
This goes to the cricket chirper that I already planted earlier this week in the recliner. He showed her the small remote. Josie took it from him, and they could hear the chirping coming from the next room.
Pretty realistic.
Josie nodded in approval.
Not bad. What was that?
Noah heard Sapphire say from the living room.
Okay, go plant the fart machine now.
Josie clapped her hands together like a kid on Christmas morning. Noah wasn't sure if she was more excited about the prank or the fact that he was about to go recon on his living room floor. He tiptoed down the hall in his socks, careful to keep from making any noise on the slick hardwood floor he'd installed last year. When he got to the end of the hall, he slowly, carefully dropped to his hands and knees and then to his belly. He army crawled silently across the living room floor, working hard to keep the plastic box from hitting the floor and making noise. He knew Josie was probably behind him trying to keep from laughing, but he didn't care. He was having too much fun. It was all worth it for the joy of watching the prank work. He reached the couch and slowly reached out to plant the box beneath it. Right at this moment, he wished he'd thought to plant the fart machine when he'd planted the cricket chirper. He tucked the box beneath the couch.
What are you doing back there?
Sapphire asked. He was caught. His mind scrambled for an excuse. I'm looking for my headphones. I think I lost them under the couch. You guys haven't seen them, have you? Nope, I haven't seen them, Dustin said. Noah got to his feet. They aren't here. I'll go check my room again. Thanks, guys. He retreated to his room.
You know, you could have just told them from the beginning that you were looking for your headphones and avoided the army crawling.
Josie pointed out when he got in there. No need to raise suspicion unnecessarily.
Did you remember to turn on the fart machine?
Of course I did. What kind of prankster do you think I am? You're dealing with a professional here.
Glad to know I'm in good hands.
Should we go in the kitchen so we can watch this drama unfold? Noah suggested. Josie giggled.
Okay.
They left Noah's room and went into the kitchen. The entire room smelled horrible, like rotten eggs. Noah had to hold his breath to keep from gagging. Josie was doubled over in silent laughter. Sapphire looked over at Dustin, her face slightly green with a look of disgust. Dustin didn't see her expression because he was too busy turning away from her with his own grossed-out look on his face. Now was the perfect time to pull out the cricket remote. Noah pressed the button, and the cricket chirped in the corner again. It sounded so real.
There it is again. There's a cricket in here. When is that exterminator coming?
Her voice was more agitated than it had been before. Is your stomach okay? Dustin asked Sapphire.
My stomach?
Why are you saying it like that? Dustin asked defensively. You're the one with tummy issues. You really should use the bathroom.
Are you serious right now?
Sapphire sounded pretty ticked off.
I've been about to gag here from your stench, and you're trying to blame this on me?
Well, I'd blame it on the cricket, but I'm pretty sure it's not him. Hey, it wasn't me. Noah piped up from the kitchen, to be sure to cover his tracks. I just came in here, and I can smell your stench all the way from over here, Dustin. I can't believe you're trying to blame that on Sapphire. Now you're both teaming up on me?
Dustin, you can't possibly think Sapphire's making that foul smell, Josie said. We all know it's you.
Noah pushed the cricket button again, but it got stuck, and the cricket started chirping rapidly like it was possessed. Sapphire covered her ears.
Make it stop!
Dustin jumped up and investigated the corner. I don't see a cricket anywhere.
It sounds like it's coming from inside the chair,
Sapphire said, uncovering her ears.
What's wrong with that crazy cricket anyway?
Noah pressed rapidly on the button, but he couldn't get it unstuck. Meanwhile, the cricket sounded like it was losing its mind. Dustin ducked his head under the chair. You're right. It is coming from inside here. I've never heard a cricket act like this before. He opened the recliner and reached inside. Noah was about to get caught. He fiddled with the button, but nothing he tried seemed to work to get the button unstuck. He could renovate his house, but he couldn't fix his own broken pranking materials. This was just pitiful.
I found something.
Dustin pulled out the cricket chirping device as it chirped away like a little plastic demon.
What is that?
Sapphire squinted at it.
I think we've been pranked.
Sapphire whipped her head around to see Noah holding the remote.
It was him.
Another fart released from the couch, except this time, Dustin was still in the corner.
I think there's something rotten in the couch, too.
She put her face to the couch cushions and gagged.
Oh, man, it's so bad.
She jumped from the couch.
Do you want to get out of here, Dustin? Let's go grab some food or something.
You sure you want to be trapped in a car with him?
Noah asked. Josie busted up laughing.
Oh, good point. You have to go to the bathroom first, Dustin.
I didn't make that smell. Noah did that. How could I stink up the couch from all the way in the kitchen? I think he planted something in the couch when he was looking for his headphones. You don't know Noah. He's the king of pranks.
Noah kept a straight face.
Sure, Dustin. Nice cover. Just blame it on the roommate. She'll never suspect you.
Sapphire looked between them like she wasn't sure who to believe.
You don't know Dustin. He's the king of stinking it up.
It's true,
Josie agreed. Sapphire wrinkled her nose.
That's gross, Dustin.
Seriously? It's okay to be embarrassed, Dustin. We all have bodily issues from time to time,
Noah said.
That's what bathrooms are for. Don't let it rip right in front of your girlfriend. Boundaries.
Sapphire threw her hands out to the sides to emphasize her words. Noah laughed under his breath. He'd lost the cricket round, but the fart machine was a big win in their favor, and he counted that as an overall success.
Chapter 11. With only 6 days until Christmas, Josie felt way behind on her holiday preparations. She hadn't wrapped a single present. The door to the coffee shop jangled, and Josie looked up to see Noah approaching her.
Hey, Noah.
Why do you look so stressed out?
I just realized there are only 6 days until Christmas, and I haven't wrapped a single thing.
That shouldn't be that big of a deal. I usually just wrap everything on Christmas Eve. Josie rolled her eyes.
You're such a guy.
Well, keep in mind that I don't really give out too many presents since my dad died. I usually give out a few gifts to some of the guys at the fire department and the fire chief and his wife. But other than that, I don't really have anyone else to give gifts to. I don't even have my mom's address.
I'm sorry, Noah. I should have realized Christmas was like that for you.
It's not your fault.
I know. I just feel bad that I haven't been a better friend to you over the years, especially during the holidays.
You've been a great friend. I don't know what you mean. How about this? Why don't I come over tonight and help you wrap up some presents? Josie's mouth fell open.
You would do that for me?
Of course I would. I have nothing going on anyway.
You really are an amazing guy. You know that, right?
I don't know about that.
Well, I do.
She could kiss him. So much stress lifted off her shoulders. Last night had been a hilarious success. Sapphire went home early, since Dustin refused to go to the bathroom to take care of business. She was convinced that he'd been lying to her. Josie had to admit it was entertaining to see Dustin put in the doghouse like that.
See you tonight.
Noah smiled at her. I'll be there. Noah showed up right on time. Josie opened her front door and let him in.
Thank you so much for coming. You're the hugest lifesaver tonight.
Glad to help. Where's the action going down?
I have everything spread out on my bedroom floor.
Sounds good. Noah followed her into her bedroom. Whoa. You bought enough presents for an army.
I have a lot of friends, not to mention my parents. I also do little gifts for my employees and the regulars at the coffee shop.
And that wasn't including the new ratchet set she'd gotten for Noah.
She had it hidden at the back of her closet. She'd noticed that his set was rusty and was missing a few pieces.
And you wrap all of them?
Yep.
We have our work cut out for us.
Yes, we do.
Well, let's get busy.
Noah knelt on the floor in the center of the room.
How do we want to do this?
How about you wrap an item and then I'll fill out the tag? That way, I won't have some random dude's handwriting on gifts that are supposed to be from me.
Hey, I'm not just some random dude.
Josie met his eye. No, Noah, you're not. You're an amazing dude, and I'm glad I have you in my life. Thank you for helping me. And thank you for being there for me when Dustin moved on so fast after I broke things off with him. That meant a lot to me.
Do you know why I do those things?
Why?
Because you mean a lot to me.
Josie's breath caught. What do you mean by that?
I mean that I think about you when I wake up and before I go to sleep.
Josie thought for a moment. Likewise, I mean, you're in my thoughts morning and night in the same way. She hadn't seen this coming, but she should have. She realized in that moment how much she had grown to care for Noah over the years, especially since their kiss at the Christmas tree lot. I don't mean that I'm just planning how we're going to launch our next prank either. I'm thinking about you, who you are, how you are.
I think about your beautiful hair and how it feels to kiss you.
Noah looked away at that admission, and Josie felt her cheeks grow warm. I think about kissing you way more than I should.
Why do you think it's way more than you should?
Because this isn't supposed to be real. And she wasn't sure it was mutual. But she didn't say that to Noah. She knew she was giving him a vague answer, and she hoped he didn't press her to clarify. He seemed to understand that she wasn't ready to elaborate, because all he said was,
"That makes sense."
And he grabbed a pair of scissors and got to work. To Josie's relief, the conversation was dropped. Josie and Noah worked together on wrapping the gifts for the next 2 hours, until only 2 gifts were left. We make an excellent team, Josie said. I can't believe we got all of this wrapped so quickly. I thought I'd be working on this every day until Christmas.
We do make an excellent team,
Noah agreed. As they had worked on wrapping the gifts together, Josie regretted her decision to chicken out on talking to Noah about her feelings. She gave it another go. You know, Josie intoned, this relationship could be real if we wanted it to be.
I guess it could.
Then what's holding us back? Heart pounding, Josie grabbed the tube of red wrapping paper. She tried to hide the fact that her hands were shaking.
Is something holding you back?
Noah asked. She'd wanted to test the waters, and Noah wasn't playing fair. He wasn't giving her anything to work with. I guess the main thing holding me back is that I'm not sure how you feel about it. Noah cut out a large square in the green wrapping paper.
Honestly, I feel conflicted.
Josie met his eyes. Explain.
I like you as a person, and kissing you is one of the best experiences of my life. I really have 2 things holding me back. I'm not sure that you're fully over Dustin, but also, I'm not sure I'm ready for what you are becoming to me. Does that make sense?
Not entirely, Josie admitted. Why don't you think you're ready?
Because the last time I felt this strongly about someone, it turned out to be a nightmare. I'm not sure I've healed enough from that.
Josie processed that for a moment. That's fair enough. How much longer do you think you need to heal?
I have no idea. How do you put a number on something like that? It's not like you have a ceremony where you graduate from divorce healing.
Then don't worry about it. How will you know you aren't ready if you don't try out a new relationship?
I won't. But I don't think today is the day to try it out.
maybe he really meant that Josie wasn't the right girl to take such a gigantic risk on. And that hurt. It felt like a rejection. Wasn't that what he was doing when he said he didn't want a relationship with her? So, you don't want to be with me?
Yes and no. It's not that I don't want you. I think you're amazing. I want you too much. And that's the problem. Josie, I'm in love with you. And it terrifies me. Josie crossed her arms and glared at him.
Why should that terrify you?
Please don't get mad at me. I don't want to hurt you. That's the last thing I want. I don't think I'm ready to test out a relationship with you. I value our friendship too much to treat you like a guinea pig.
I can handle it, Noah. I'd be honored to help you figure out a new relationship post-divorce.
That's awesome, and I appreciate it, but I can't handle it. Josie frowned.
I don't think it's such a great idea to continue with this fake relationship. It's gotten too serious for me. I don't think I can move forward without getting hurt.
Are you saying you have feelings for me too?
Yes, Noah. I'm in love with you too. I can't be around you anymore if I don't get to be yours. And I mean, really yours. Not this pretend relationship.
I had no idea. I thought you were still hung up on Dustin.
I'm not. I haven't been for a while. Maybe I felt a little jealous and hurt that he moved on so fast. But I only reacted that way because it felt like I wasn't valuable enough as a person to feel sad over. But I was the one who left Dustin. I wasn't feeling it with him. That's why I ended the relationship.
Noah finished taping up the last gift, and he handed it to Josie so she could label it. She filled out a tag and attached it to the present. So, this is it? Noah asked.
Unless you change your mind, this is it.
I'm not changing my mind.
Then we're officially broken up from our fake relationship.
I'm sad it has to end this way. I hope we can still be friends.
I'm not sure that's possible. I think that will be too painful for me, Noah.
I understand. Noah stood up. I should probably get going.
Okay.
Josie didn't get up from her spot on the floor. I'll, let myself out.
Goodbye, Noah.
His eyes bored into her own. Goodbye, Josie.
Chapter 12. Noah was miserable for the next several days. He worked his shifts at the fire department and then he came home. Sapphire continued to come over like nothing had happened. She was sad that Josie and Noah had broken up, but when she wanted details, he wouldn't give them to her. He'd run out of pranks, and nothing had worked to get rid of Sapphire. He was at the end of his rope. In the meantime, his kitchen stayed constantly messy. Not even a fake roach infestation seemed to deter Sapphire. She hated the bugs, but she was gross enough to be okay with cohabitating with the roaches. A few days before Christmas, she was baking cookies again, and she had remembered to take them out of the oven on time. Good job on not burning the cookies, Sapphire. Hilarious, Noah. I bake without burning things all the time. Could have fooled me, he muttered under his breath. What was that? Sapphire asked with a scowl. Nothing. That's what I thought. How can you cook in here with all these roaches everywhere? You think I don't know? Know what? That this is all fake. Noah didn't know what to say to that. I know you don't want me here, and that you were pranking me to chase me off. I heard you and Josie talking about it. You knew? Why do you think I'm still here? It's sure not for Dustin. He's not even that great of a kisser. Dustin would be so hurt to hear you say that. Like I care. I'm just here for the kitchen. Callie's place is way too tiny. I can hardly move around in the kitchen without bashing my elbow on something. Plus, her snacks are awful. She never keeps good food in the house. She was the most infuriating girl he'd ever met. So you think you can just use us and toy with Dustin's heart and then get away with it?
Dustin would never believe you if you told him this. He'd think you were just jealous because he has a girlfriend and yours dumped you.
Get out of my house.
You can't make me leave. Dustin wants me here.
Yes, I can. He's not here. I'll just tell the cops he broke up with you.
They won't listen to you.
I'm close friends with the chief of police. He'll listen to me.
Whatever.
Sapphire stacked about 4 cookies and shouldered her bag from the couch.
You're no fun to hang out with anyway. But you can't chase me off when Dustin's here. He'll let me stay whenever I want.
Not if I have something to say about it. He shut the door after her and twisted the deadbolt. He had to work a night shift that evening. He packed some dinner and headed out the door. The evening passed by uneventfully, just like any other, until just past midnight when he heard strange noises coming from near the fire truck. He crept around the truck and glanced around the corner. The first thing he saw was a head of long blonde hair he'd know anywhere. Sapphire was caught up in a passionate embrace with McNeil again. She had him all shoved up against the side of the truck, but she looked like she was way more into him than she ever was with Dustin. Noah pulled out his phone and hit record. It was time to capture her constant betrayal to Dustin on video. He was sick of watching his buddy get cheated on. He stood there for some time, recording Sapphire making out with Dustin's fellow firefighter. He quietly stopped the video and retreated into the shadows without her seeing him. He sent a copy of the video to the cloud and emailed it to himself for good measure. Then he stepped from the shadows.
Sapphire, can I talk to you for a minute?
She turned away from her embrace with McNeil and faced Noah. Her lips were swollen and her eyes were wide. McNeil looked between them and took in Noah's furious expression. I better get back to work. I'll see you around, Sapphire.
Bye, honey.
Her voice was sugary sweet. Then she turned back to Noah with a sour look.
What do you want?
I want you to break up with Dustin.
And why would I do something like that?
Because you don't want him. Let him go.
Oh, but I do. She smiled sweetly. He's fun.
You mean he's fun to toy with? Her eyes narrowed.
I didn't say that.
But that's what you're doing. She rolled her eyes.
Whatever you say, Noah.
So break up with him. Let him find someone who actually loves him. Or let him be single in peace. Whichever. Just stop playing with someone's feelings like it's a game.
What makes you think I'm gonna listen to anything you have to say?
I have a video of you making out with McNeil. Her face went white.
I don't believe you.
He hit play on his phone, and the video started. He held it up toward her so she could see it. Believe me now?
You can't do this.
Yes, I can. Break up with him, or I'll send him this video right now.
Fine. I'll break up with him.
Tonight.
He's probably asleep. It's past midnight.
Send him a text. She pulled out her phone, and her hands trembled. He almost felt bad for her. Almost. But then he remembered how she'd stolen his Doritos, and he hardened his resolve. Her fingers moved over her screen for a moment before she paused.
Okay.
Show me. She turned the phone around so he could see it.
Dustin, I'm gonna have to end things between us. This is it. I'm officially breaking up with you. Good luck to you and your future endeavors.
She crossed her arms.
Is that good enough for you?
That's good enough. She gave him a bored look.
Can I go now?
Go home, and don't come to my house again. The next evening, he went to Dixie's Tavern for a burger and some onion rings. He found a booth and took a seat by himself. A glass of Jack Daniels sat in front of him, and he planned to stay there all night, washing his sorrows away. He may have gotten rid of Sapphire, but he hadn't been able to fix the gaping hole in his heart. He couldn't move on without Josie, but he couldn't move forward with her either. She deserved better than a guy like him, who was broken from a previous marriage.
Noah, how's it going?
He looked up to see Will and his wife, Layla. Want to sit down? He asked.
Sure,
Layla said, sliding into the booth across from him with Will just behind her.
What's wrong? I've never seen you like this.
It's nothing I haven't done to myself.
What do you mean?
Layla asked. This wouldn't have to do with Josie, would it? Will asked. You've been glued to each other's sides lately, and now she's nowhere to be seen.
You're an observant guy.
I have to be. I'm the chief of police.
So, why isn't Josie here having fun with you tonight?
Because I pushed her away.
Why would you do something stupid like that?
Because I'm an idiot.
Well, stop being an idiot.
Easier said than done.
I don't get it.
Layla scrunched her brow in confusion. What's keeping you from being with Josie? Will asked.
My last marriage was a disaster.
I know it was, Will said. I was right here watching that disaster. What does that have to do with Josie? We both know she's nothing like Sophie. You can't base every relationship on what happened in the past.
I'm just not ready to try another relationship. How's that working out for you so far? Layla asked.
It's not working out at all. I'm miserable.
So, you can either take a risk with Josie or be miserable while she's miserable right along with you,
Layla said. I hadn't thought of it that way.
You think she's doing much better?
Layla asked.
I just went to her coffee shop this morning, and she looks like she hadn't slept in days. And we both know Josie is usually the perkiest one at her shop.
Josie isn't sleeping? Worry lanced through him. He hadn't thought about how his decision might hurt Josie.
It sure didn't look like she'd been sleeping.
Well, that changes things. It was one thing for him to be miserable and suffering, but he couldn't bear the thought of Josie hurting because of his decision. He thought she'd move on easily from him, not struggle like this. So, go after her. Will grinned at him. I'm not sure I can anymore. I may have already messed things up. That's just a risk you're going to have to take. Will really wasn't going easy on him tonight. But when did Will go easy on anyone?
Chapter 13. Josie handed off the last cup of coffee to the customer who had shown up for the morning rush. She wiped her brow and took a deep breath. Callie came inside.
Can I get a latte?
I got it, Rachel said.
You go sit down for a minute. You're long past your break. Are you sure?
Of course. Josie took a seat at the corner table and leaned back, stretching out the soreness in her back. Since she and Noah had last spoken, she'd thrown herself into her work, and she hadn't stopped to take a breath. It was bad enough that she'd been tossing and turning in bed all week, but when life slowed down, she remembered that Noah didn't want to be with her. When Callie got her drink, she took a seat next to Josie.
Are you okay?
Callie asked.
You don't look so good. I've been better. Noah and I broke up.
Oh no, that's awful.
You guys were so cute together. You seem like you're taking it hard. Actually, it's a lot worse than I'd expected. And it feels like the longer we're apart, the worse I feel. I've had Noah in my life for so long that it feels like a vacuum without him around.
What's the problem?
He says he's not ready for a relationship since he went through his divorce. I guess we were getting too serious for him. We told each other we loved each other. It was just playful before that.
That was an understatement. But Josie didn't let on how playful their relationship had actually been. Josie stared down at the table.
Speaking of breakups, I heard that Sapphire ended it with Dustin.
Josie snapped her head up.
What?
Yeah, she came home and told me the other night.
Did she say why? She just said that she'd ended things. She didn't give a reason. Josie wondered if Noah had anything to do with that. Had their pranking paid off after all? What are you going to do about Sapphire stealing away your inheritance? I haven't figured out what I can do. As long as my grandma is letting her take these books, Sapphire can do whatever she wants. I have an idea. Can I come over to your place after work? Sure.
Josie knocked on the door to Callie's townhouse, and Sapphire opened it.
Well, hey there,
Josie said.
Hi.
What are you doing here?
I came over to talk to Callie. Is she home?
Yeah, she's in her room. Come on in. Sapphire stepped aside so Josie could walk past her into the foyer. She jogged up the stairs to the bedrooms and knocked on Callie's door.
Callie?
Callie opened her bedroom door.
Hey, what's up?
She opened the door wider and led Josie into the room.
Mind if I shut the door? Go for it.
Josie shut it behind her.
So, about Sapphire. Keep your voice low. That girl likes to listen in. She's super nosy.
That was new information for Josie, but she should have known. It fit with her personality. Josie got the impression that Sapphire was smarter than she looked.
We need to get into her computer and find proof that she's been selling the books. Then, we take the proof to your grandma and tell her the truth about Sapphire.
That will make my grandma sad. She thinks of Sapphire as another granddaughter. I don't want her to die of a broken heart.
Then we need to convince Sapphire to stop taking the books and leave town,
Josie whispered.
Why did she move here anyway?
I have no idea, but it seemed specific. Like, why Maple Creek of all places? We're not exactly a bustling metropolis.
So how do we get into her computer without her noticing? Doesn't she keep it password protected?
Yeah, so unless she's just been on it, the system will be locked down.
Well, you saw it before, so you know she's been selling these books. Maybe we just do some bluffing and act like you have a printout?
That's risky, but it could work.
What's the worst thing that could happen?
We let Sapphire know we're onto her and she covers her tracks before we can catch her for real?
Maybe we should scout around her room and find some proof first?
I'll distract her downstairs. You go to her room to look for evidence. Callie looked over the banister and then came back into the room. Actually, she's just watching TV. I'll sit here and be a lookout, and I'll say something loud to her if she heads in this direction.
Sounds like a plan.
Josie headed into Sapphire's room. The entire place was a disaster. Dirty clothes littered the floor, and a stack of sweaters was draped over the back of the desk chair. Josie searched Sapphire's room for a good 10 minutes, but couldn't find a scrap of evidence that Sapphire was planning to sell the books. And she hadn't sold all the books off either. They sat in a stack in the room's corner. She had 5 of them left. The Count of Monte Cristo was missing. It broke Josie's heart to think of that dear book being sold off. She probably didn't get a fair price for it either. Sapphire might be conniving, but she didn't have the reputation Mrs. Ellison had. She wouldn't have been able to get the same price. It would also explain why she'd been able to sell the books quickly. Josie felt horrified to think of how much of Mrs. Ellison's money had been wasted. She opened the book on top of the stack, and a slip of paper was inside. She was expecting to see a sales receipt, but what she found instead was unexpected. It was a handwritten letter from Mrs. Ellison, dated November 15th of that year. She thanked Sapphire for a pleasant visit and was inviting Sapphire to come work for her. Beneath the letter, a picture fell out. It was a picture of a younger Mrs. Ellison, an older woman, and a little blonde girl. It looked like it was about 20 years old, if their clothing was any sign. She turned the picture over. For Sapphire was inscribed on the back. Had Sapphire grown up going to that bookshop with a grandparent like Josie had? There was something familiar about the blue dress Sapphire was wearing in the picture. Josie remembered seeing a little blonde girl who would go to that store with her grandparents. Was that Sapphire? Did she used to come to visit grandparents in Maple Creek? Josie studied the picture again. She couldn't remember the older lady with Mrs. Ellison. So many unanswered questions. But if Sapphire grew up going to Mrs. Ellison's bookshop, then she would know how valuable the books were. That would explain why Sapphire wanted to take the job and move to Maple Creek. She must have realized when she came out to meet with Mrs. Ellison that the woman was going senile, and decided it was worth taking advantage of the opportunity to swindle her. It wasn't too late to get Sapphire to admit to selling the books. They just had to act like they already had proof of it. They could say they had screenshots from when she left her laptop open. Josie left Sapphire's room and motioned for Callie to join her in the master bedroom. She showed her the letter and filled her in on her suspicions about Sapphire visiting the bookshop as a kid. Callie studied the picture. I remember them. That lady came in with her granddaughter all the time. She was my grandma's best friend. I never really got to know her, though. I know she died this last October. I bet Sapphire came back for the funeral. That would make sense. Maybe she saw my grandma at the funeral and made her plans then. I'm going to go talk to her. Turn on the recorder on your phone. Josie led the way, and Callie followed her to the living room where Sapphire was watching TV. Josie grabbed the remote and paused Sapphire's show. What's up? She smiled up at them like nothing was wrong. Josie crossed her arms. We know you've been taking rare books from Mrs. Ellison and selling them for way less than they're worth. Sapphire kept her face still, not moving a muscle, not showing a single emotion. I haven't done a single thing wrong. Mrs. Ellison gave me those books, and you have no proof. So at this point, it's your word against mine. We have proof. Callie took pictures of your computer screen. Sapphire looked at Callie, and her eyes widened with fear. The emotion only lasted a second. So what? I sold the books. Mrs. Ellison gave them to me. I can do whatever I want with them. But those books were Callie's inheritance. They were worth way more than what you got for them. Why do you think you could sell them so fast? I'm perfectly aware of what they're worth and what I sold them for. Because she was desperate for money. Only a person in trouble would be so rash. Otherwise, why not take the time and sell the books for their full worth? At that point, Sapphire could start an entire business off of the rare copies she'd been able to get. What's the big rush, Sapphire? Who do you answer to? Josie asked. You don't want to know. Let's just put it this way. The person I answer to is more powerful than you could imagine, and I owe him a lot of money. Are you in some kind of legal trouble? Josie wondered what Sapphire gotten herself wrapped up in. Maybe Will could help her out. I had a deal go bad. Like what, a drug deal? Callie asked. I didn't want to get involved. I didn't deal any drugs. It was my ex-boyfriend, but he's pinning everything on me. I'm trying to use the money from the books to pay these guys off, so they'll leave me alone. Why don't you go down to the police station and see what Will can work out for you? You think the cops care about me? They'll just send me to jail. They're all the same. Not if we explain to Will that you're innocent. He'll listen to us. But we'll only help you if you give all the money back to Mrs. Ellison. I can't give it back to her. I've already given my first payment to these guys. Then give her the rest of the books. She worked her entire life to build up a collection like this. Don't take that from an innocent woman. I don't think Sapphire cares a bit about my grandmother. She's only out to save her own skin. If you give us the books and tell Mrs. Ellison you can't accept them, then we'll tell Will your story and vouch for you. He can get you into witness protection, and you can out the guys hunting you down. And if I don't, then we'll send this recording to the police, and we'll tell them you're planning to sell these books to pay off a drug dealer. Sapphire's face turned red, but then her shoulders slumped.
Fine, I'll do it.
Chapter 14. The night before Christmas, Noah stood on Josie's front porch. He held a potted poinsettia in one arm and a wrapped Christmas present in the other. Behind him stood most of the Maple Creek Fire Department. He reached out an arm and rang the doorbell with a pinky. His arms were so full it was all he could spare. Josie opened the door, and they broke out in a terrible, off-key rendition of We Wish You a Merry Christmas. When they finished, Josie clapped and cheered.
That was so great, guys.
I have something for you, Josie. Noah handed her the poinsettia.
Thank you, Noah.
He could see hope lighting in her eyes. She wanted him to change his mind. Good. That made him a lot less nervous. Josie, I'm madly in love with you. I want you and no one else. I'm here to let you know that I've been a complete idiot who needs to beg for forgiveness. But please, don't make me beg too hard, or I might have to get on my knees and grovel. Josie laughed.
No need to grovel. I forgive you, you ridiculous man. And I love you too.
Does that mean I get a kiss? She rose her eyebrows.
You really are pushing your luck tonight.
But then she fell into his arms and laid a kiss on him. The crowd behind him whooped and hollered and cheered. He wrapped his arms around her, which was a little awkward because he was still holding the gift for her, and she had the plant. But she felt amazing in his arms. His heart was about to explode with joy. How many years had he waited to be held like this by the woman of his dreams? Well, minus all the awkwardness with their full hands. He'd have to give her a proper hug later, and there would be plenty of time for all of that later. They had a beautiful, bright future together. Josie was the kind of girl any guy would be lucky to have. She was responsible and hard-working, cute and funny, the perfect partner in crime. He had no idea how he'd gotten so lucky. They pulled apart, and he handed her the wrapped present. This is for you too.
Do you guys want to come in while I open this?
Josie said. The group cheered, and Josie ushered them all inside. Noah could see her filling the role of the fire chief's wife one day, but that would be down the road a bit. They settled around Josie's Christmas tree. A fire crackled in her wood-burning fireplace. Noah knew Josie had chopped the wood herself. That was the kind of woman she was, and he loved every facet of her. She was unique and beautiful, quirky and sweet. Open the present, Noah said. Josie smiled at him, her teeth brilliant white against her bright red lips. She tore off the red paper, revealing a flat white box. She lifted the lid and gasped. Inside, nestled among cotton, was a sparkly crystal necklace.
Noah, this is gorgeous.
She waved him over to her and lifted her hair to the side.
Help me put this on.
Noah scooted closer to Josie. He took the delicate clasp between his fingers and fastened it for her. Someone's gonna have a good night tonight, McNeil teased. Not too good. You know Josie isn't that kind of girl. He'd known Josie well enough to know that she put the brakes on too much physical activity, and he was perfectly fine with that. But he would have a good night with Josie. One of the best nights of his life so far, because it was Christmas Eve, and now she was his. The woman of his dreams. He couldn't have asked for a better gift. And they both had someone to spend their holiday with. Josie, I think it's time to kick these goobers out of here. I'm not finished giving you your Christmas present. His buddies whooped and hollered and teased them good-naturedly.
You're making me blush, Noah.
The other firefighters left, and Noah went to where Josie stood in front of the fire. Ready for your Christmas present?
You really are cheesy. You know that, right?
I'm okay with that assessment. He pulled her close and brushed her hair back from her face with the gentlest touch. I adore you, Josie Sparks.
I adore you back, Noah Stanley.
She looked up into his eyes.
I'll remember this moment forever.
The moment when I'm about to kiss you until your toes curl? Josie giggled.
I think you've already done that twice.
Wait, I have? Josie nodded.
You're very good at it.
Making your toes curl? Josie brushed her nose against his.
Mm-hmm.
When he could stand it no longer, he leaned in and kissed her tenderly. She was the sweetest woman he'd ever known, and he never planned to let her go. And that brought him the most exquisite joy. The next morning, Noah went back over to Josie's house. Her parents were there with her, and she was just pulling orange sticky buns from the oven. "Merry Christmas," Noah called when Josie let him in. She wrapped her arms around him and kissed him.
Noah.
Mrs. Sparks greeted him with a big smile.
I hear that you finally decided to date my daughter.
Finally?
I've seen the way your face lights up when she's around. We were just waiting for you to go for her,
Mrs. Sparks explained. Noah wasn't aware that he'd been that obvious, but he wasn't too surprised by it either. He'd had feelings for Josie for a long time. He sat with Josie down to breakfast, and he savored every bite of her delicious rolls.
I have a question for you, Noah,
Josie said.
What did you do to get Sapphire to break up with Dustin? Callie told me they'd broken up.
I caught her making out with McNeil again, and I took a video. I told her to end it or I'd show it to Dustin.
Did you show it to him anyway?
Mrs. Sparks asked. I did. I figured he deserved to know. I was worried Sapphire would try to talk him into dating her again, and I wanted to make sure that bridge was fully burned. My buddy deserved to know.
Dustin's not a bad guy,
Josie said.
He wasn't right for me, but he doesn't deserve to be mistreated. I hope he finds someone great for him.
He will, Noah said.
Callie and I did a bit of recording ourselves. We got Sapphire to admit that she was selling Mrs. Ellison's books so she could pay off her ex-boyfriend's drug debt. Will's going to help her get protected so the authorities can take down the drug dealer who was threatening her. That's scary,
Mrs. Sparks said.
I hope you weren't too wrapped up in that. Not really. Just enough to get Sapphire to do the right thing and go to the authorities. She'll be helping to take down a big drug operation.
Who knew Sapphire had some good in her after all? Even if she was cornered into making the right choice, it was still better than trying to destroy the evidence or talk her way out of it. After breakfast, they settled around the tree, and Josie gave Noah a gift. I wasn't expecting you to get me anything.
Are you kidding me? You think I'd get presents for everyone else and not you?
I wasn't sure how you really felt about me, and after the way I turned you down, I thought you might take my gift back to the store if you had gotten me anything.
Nope.
Josie shook her head.
Now open it. I'm dying to see your reaction.
She practically bounced out of her seat on the couch next to him. Noah tore off the paper, and a gigantic smile crossed his face. You got me a new ratchet set? How did you know I needed this?
I'm observant. I saw that you were missing a bunch from your own set, and it was all rusted up. It wasn't easy to know what tools to get you. You already have everything.
Next, Josie's parents opened their gifts. Her dad was thrilled with the tool set Josie and Noah had picked out for him. Josie got a new e-reader from her mom, and her dad got her a stack of books to add to her collection. Because she always wanted more books. Josie's parents even had a gift for him. They got him a new dress shirt and a knitted hat her mother had made.
When Josie told us you were dating, we knew we couldn't show up here without gifts for you.
I'm sorry, I didn't get you anything, Noah said. He was still new to the whole family by the fire at Christmas thing. His dad had loved him, but their Christmases were sparse. Josie had been the one to teach him how to celebrate the holidays properly. And now, he had a family to celebrate with. And that was the greatest gift of all. The end.
This has been Kiss Me Under the Christmas Lights, a sweet romantic comedy. Maple Creek Romantic Comedy, Book 8. Written by Cindy Ray Hale. Narrated by Mari B. and John Bratton. Copyright 2021 by Cindy Ray Hale. Production copyright by Cindy Ray Hale.